Have you ever walked out of a meeting thinking, did anyone even hear me? Maybe you made a point, shared an idea, even repeated yourself multiple times, and somehow it just doesn't land. Then a few minutes later, someone else says almost the same thing, and it's suddenly the best idea in the room. Or maybe you're finding your boss nods politely but never follows through. Your team keeps missing your direction. And you're starting to wonder, am I just not being clear enough? Am I the problem here? If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Feeling unheard is one of the most common frustrations I see in women leaders, especially in tech. And it's not just about communication skills. It's about how the brain listens, how the power and bias that's around us affects who gets heard, and how easily we can fall into patterns that make our voices smaller without even realizing it. In today's episode, we're unpacking all of this, why so many great leaders just like you struggle to get heard, and what's really going on underneath that dynamic. I'm going to dig into the neuroscience of listening and trust, what actually happens in the brain when people decide to tune in or zone out. And I'll share some practical tools you can use right away to shift how others perceive you and your ideas, your authority, and your presence. We're going to also look at the other side of this, because sometimes the reason we're not being heard is that we've stopped listening too. So I'm going to walk you through a few mindset and communication habits that can help you break that cycle and start creating the kind of leadership conversations where everyone, including you, feels heard. So if you've ever found yourself repeating the same message, trying harder to get your point across, or just wondering what it takes to get taken seriously, this episode is for you. So let's dive in. Let's start by talking about what's really happening when you're not being heard at work, whether it's your boss doesn't listen, your peers who talk over you, or a team that just doesn't follow through. It's easy to take this personally. I hear you. Most of us do. We all take it personally. It's okay. We assume it means we're not communicating clearly enough, but simultaneously are so frustrated, even angry. We work hard on our leadership presence, but often it's not about how loudly we're speaking. It's about how the people around you are listening or not listening. Here's the thing. Our brains are not designed to take in every piece of information that's shared. We constantly filter, every single one of us, especially in fast-moving tech environments where there's massive cognitive overload, constant pings from email and Slack, and everyone is at capacity. When that happens, even the best ideas can get lost. And before you ask yourself, what is she talking about? We all filter. The number, you probably have a friend or maybe a loved one where you'll both be in the same room. This happens to me and my husband all the time. And we'll have different interpretations of what has been said. We filter differently. We were both there. We both saw the same body language. We both heard the exact same words, but we filter it in a different way. That's not wrong. It's human. What you got to do is work with that rather than against it, because we don't want the best ideas to get lost. For a neuroscience perspective, the brain is paying attention to what it feels is relevant, emotionally safe, and rewarding to it. If your message triggers a sense of threat or confusion, or simply doesn't connect to the listener's priorities, we have this, what I call a BS filter. If something just bounces off it, it gets filtered out. Not because you're wrong or unimportant, but because their brain literally tunes it out to manage energy. Our brains are very energy demanding. It's one of the biggest things costing energy in the way you move around in the world, right? Your brain uses more than your muscles. So your brain is constantly looking at ways to save energy and filtering out stuff it doesn't view as important. And it's the stuff that your brain unconsciously decides is not important. You're not consciously aware of doing that. It's just going to filter it out. So this is why you're not being heard at work. It's not about what you say, but it's about how you safely signal safety and relevance in your communication. It's why some people can walk into a meeting and immediately hold the room's attention. Their voice, their tone, their timing, their clarity activate somebody's brain's attention network. And that's what we often refer to as executive presence, or at least one aspect of it. The neuroscience of leadership communication in action gives you executive presence. So if you've been wondering what to do when your boss doesn't listen, or when your team keeps missing your directions, This is where the shift begins. In the next few minutes, I want to walk you through why even experienced leaders fail to listen and how understanding the brain's listening patterns can completely change how you show up, get heard, and lead more effectively. So let's dig into why this happens. Why so many of us, even the experienced leaders, struggle to get heard. When I ask clients what they think is going on, I often hear this: my boss doesn't listen, or my team just tunes me out, or my team doesn't respect me even. But here's the truth. It's rarely one thing. There are usually 3 or 4 dynamics happening all at once. The first dynamic is power and bandwidth. When you're communicating upward, trying to get your boss to listen, you're competing for attention against a dozen other priorities. Senior leaders filter for risk, alignment, and results. So if your message doesn't connect to your current focus, if it's not that they're ignoring your purpose, their brain is simply not flagging you as important or urgent. I know that sucks to hear, so stick with me, because we are going to fix this. But the same goes when you're leading a team. They're overloaded too, managing their own fires. So not listening is often more about capacity than intent. Think about what happens when you're tired. We zone out more. You realize you have been listening, but not listening. Your kids are asking for something, you're like, I have no idea what you just said. Right? When we're overloaded and tired, we don't pay as much attention. It's why I think working crazy hours, and the science backs this up, the research backs this up, working more than 45 hours a week is bad for business, partly because of this, because we all stop listening. We make less good decisions because we're less well informed, because we're not listening, because we're too tired. Okay. The second reason is cognitive bias. So let's just put this out there. Particularly as women, our voices are received differently, especially in tech and leadership positions, right? We are not associated with tech or leadership. Women are associated with taking care of people. We're associated with the caring industry, and we're definitely not associated with leadership, right? If you've ever done an unconscious bias test, you know what I'm talking about. So because of this, it's not surprising that research shows that women are interrupted more often. We're credited less for our ideas. We have our input unconsciously devalued in mixed gender discussions. That means you might be saying something brilliant, but if it's not delivered in the format or tone that the listener expects from a credible leader, it will and does get missed. That's where executive presence come in. Not about pretending to be somebody else, but understanding how perception shapes who gets heard. So before I move on and tell you about the third and fourth gaps, let me just reassure you, we are going to be able to fix this. Yes, there is unconscious bias. Yes, there is explicit bias. It doesn't mean you can't do something about it. There is a higher hurdle for us as women because we are inherently taken less seriously, right? But it doesn't mean we can't do something about it. I have worked with so many brilliant women. I have so many examples of getting taken really seriously. So before you panic and think, goodness me, there's nothing we can do. No, there is. Just stick with me. Okay. Let's go back to the dynamics of what's going on. The third dynamic, the third reason is a communication mismatch. We often lead with logic when the person needs emotion, or with detail when they need vision. I talk about this a lot on the podcast, but you've got to meet people where their head is at. Part of executive presence is recognizing what the person in front of you needs to hear. It's having a huge amount of situational awareness. For example, when you tell your boss, I think we should rethink this approach, their brain hears problem, risk, more work. But when you start with, here's an opportunity to make this easier for the team and more efficient for our customers, that same idea now lands as solution, alignment, and progress. It's the same content, but framed through the brain's preference for safety and reward. The fourth dynamic, and this one surprises people, is over-explaining. So stick with me here. When you don't feel heard, it's natural to try harder, to add more details, more justification. But the brain interprets that as uncertainty. You can accidentally talk yourself out of credibility. The more words we use to prove our point, though, the less power those words really have. So if you've ever found yourself thinking, my boss just doesn't listen, doesn't care, no one takes my ideas seriously, it's worth asking, is this a communication issue, a perception issue, or a bandwidth issue? Because the fix looks different for each one. And here's something that's often missed when we talk about leadership communication, and why, in my opinion, most leadership communication training programs do not work for women. sometimes we're the ones who stopped listening too. And that's really hard for us as women to accept because in my experience, we've been forced to listen our entire careers. And I've certainly seen this in myself, and I've seen it in many of my clients. We have listened, we're listening, and we're so sick and tired of not being heard, we suddenly don't realize we're not listening anymore. And it's hard to recognize that. This is why part of the work I do is leveling up somebody's self-awareness, recognizing when have they zoned out, when are they tired, when they're not functioning fully, because that's when we understand that we've truly stopped participating, sometimes from years of being, quite frankly, rightly pissed off. So when you feel unseen or undervalued for too long, your brain goes into self-protection mode. You start filtering out others' input. And this is why we aren't served well in communication training as women, because that is not recognized by men. Communication training is written and delivered by men for men, but they don't understand what it's like to have a lifetime of not being seen and heard and valued, and what that does to our filters, to our unconscious filters, because we will tune it out. That's the emotional feedback loop that keeps both sides unheard. And we do have some control over this. So part of what I want you to do when your boss doesn't listen or when your team stops listening is to reset that loop, to create small moments of listening that invite reciprocity. Because when you model attention and presence, you teach others, consciously or not, how to do the same thing. In a moment, we'll talk practical tools, but for right now, let's talk about what it actually takes to lead when no one's listening. Let's start with what not to do. Don't try to speak louder, work harder, or explain more, right? Let's just let go of these. Certainly, speaking louder, we kind of all know this, but we do all fall into the trap of it. Working harder, just stop, my love. Working harder is not getting you any further. It is just damaging you. It is burning you out, because why are you working harder? That's a stress response. The working hard in itself is not the problem, but the stress that's causing it is the problem. That will cause burnout. And over explaining, you're hitting their bullshit filter. Excuse my language again, right? You just need to slow down. I say just, so hard to do, and start changing how you're feeling. So we need to respond to a feeling. We need to take care of ourselves, our frustration, our invisibility, our disconnection, instead of focusing on, hey, they're not hearing me. The more we push, the more the other person's brain goes in defense mode. They start feeling frustrated and disconnected, and they filter out more. You must have heard this. You're like, you've over-explained. You're saying it 10 times, and they're just saying the same thing. That's them getting defensive. That's them going, you're not hearing me. We all do it. We all do this. So the goal isn't to be louder. It's to be cleaner, clearer, calmer, and more connected. I had not realized that was like lots of C's. Cleaner, clearer, calmer, and more connected. One of the most powerful tools that I teach, and you might have seen me teach this one before because I talk about it a lot, is outcome, process, ask. It's a formula. It's simple. It's a really simple structure for leadership communication that helps you cut through noise and make sure your messaging lands. Whether you're talking to your boss, your peers, your team, here's how it works. Start with the outcome, with the why, the outcome you're driving towards. It's step one. For example, instead of we need to update the plan, you might say, to deliver the launch on time, we need to adjust our next sprint. You're showing purpose and context right up front. And that immediately helps people bring themselves to the table. It makes their brains tune on in. Talk about what is going to matter to them. So actually, there is a caveat to this. Outcome needs to be the outcome that's going to resonate with your audience, right? So you need to know what keeps them awake at night. You need to know how they operate. You need to know if they're a big picture person or a vision person or a detail person. Don't bring big picture ideas to somebody who loves their data and graphs. And likewise, if somebody hates data, do not bring them data. Bring them a big picture vision, right? Make sure the outcome resonates to the person you're trying to talk to. If you're talking to a room, either pick the most influential people in that room. There are always people in that room who are more influential than others. And this is why one of the first things I do in the first 90 days, training and transition coaching for people, whether it's a new job, a promotion, new company, new project, get the landscape, understand the people, understand who has that natural influence. They might not have the job title, but everybody kind of follows them along, because those are the people, when you've got a room full, those are the people you need to be thinking of. What is the outcome that's going to resonate with them? because everybody else is going to follow them. Politics. This is what politics really means in the workplace. A lot of people think politics is the dirty stuff, the unpleasant stuff, which has no place at work. Politics is actually about people, and this is it. We are herd creatures. Maybe that's not quite the right word, but we follow each other. So you've got to figure out who's following who. I want you to be the person that's followed, but to get started, you need to understand why other people are following others, and then talk to the natural leader in the room. They might not be a leader per se, but for whatever reason, their view is taken more seriously. That's the person to consider the outcome that they need to be hearing. So step 1 is outcome. Step 2 is process. Outline the how. What's the path to the outcome? This isn't about over-explaining. So this is really important. Don't go into too much detail because you want to show confidence and clarity. It's something simple. It's the way to make the shift without slowing down other teams, right? It's the way to say, we're going to do this, and it needs to be simple and minimal and for the right audience. They can ask follow-up questions if they want more on the process, but don't over-explain the process too much. The higher up you are in the organization, in general, the less process you need because they don't know what you do. The irony of getting promoted higher and higher up is that people around you know less about what you do. They are much less likely to have had your job or your previous jobs. And there comes a point when none of your peers have ever done anything like what you do, especially once you're in the C-suite. And therefore, process really is kind of irrelevant at that point. There are places for it, but it's minimal. Okay, and then step 3 of outcome process ask is the ask. You need to go in clear and specific. Can I get your support on this? Can you confirm this priority as we move forward? This last step is critical. A direct ask signals that you're leading with focus and decisiveness, which activates trust and tension. Now, I want you to be aware that I want you to be cautious about asking for permission. I like to use phrases like, I recommend this. Do I have your go ahead? Right? Rather than, I'd like to do this. What do you think? Right? That's too vague. It's not assertive enough. I want you to go in with basically, I'm going to go and do this. I need your green check rather than, can I please? It's just a different attitude. But you need to do outcome first, process briefly, and then a very specific ask. And the more you can focus on decisiveness, you're going to activate trust and attention. You can use this framework all the time. Next time you're speaking to your boss, try this outcome process ask. For example, try something like, to hit our customer goals this quarter, that's the outcome, we need to resolve this performance bottleneck, the process. Yes, performance bottleneck is a process in this context. I'd like your input on the best way to raise this with leadership. That's the ask. So here's the interesting thing about that ask. You're saying, I'm going to raise this with leadership, whether you like it or not. So it's very assertive, but you'd like their input. That's saying, here's the thing, that's saying, hey, I'd really appreciate your insight in this situation, even though I'm going to go ahead and do it. It says mentoring. It gives all sorts of positive vibes, but you're still being assertive and you're still being very clear on that ask. Okay. Notice what it does. It signals alignment. It signals clarity. 2 things. The executive brain is wired to prioritize. And that's how you get heard at work without forcing it, without over explaining, without talking loudly, without going over and over. Outcome, process, ask. Now, another essential skill here is regulating yourself, your own nervous system before you speak. When you feel unheard, your body interprets it as a threat. Your heart rate rises, your tone sharpens. That tension then transmits. People can read it. They might not know what's wrong, but they just feel off around you. If you pause, you can take in one slow breath, and you can do this in front of them. They might not even notice. And anchor yourself. Maybe even lower your voice slightly. Just stop talking up here and start talking from your belly. You project authority and calm when you do that. It's a small psychological shift, but it changes everything about how your messaging is perceived. This is where the neuroscience and the leadership communication intersect. You're literally rewiring how other people's brains respond to your presence. So now let's practice what I call reverse listening. So start by showing you've understood the other person's perspective. I hear that your main concern is timeline. Here's how my proposal supports that. One sentence creates psychological safety. You're acknowledging them, and you're making your listener's brain open to receiving new information. You're proving you're not just wanting to talk or waiting to talk. You're engaged, you're attuned, you're leading collaboratively. And finally, remember that listening is contagious. If your team isn't listening, ask yourself, how well am I listening right now? A lot of the time when we feel like other people aren't listening, we just keep going, we just keep talking. But actually, sometimes the best thing to do is to pause. When people truly feel heard, they become more receptive to hearing you in return. It's this beautiful, virtuous cycle, one that great leaders create intentionally. So when you're wondering how to get your brain to listen or how to get your team to engage again, start with those 3 steps. Use clarity with outcome process ask. Regulate your own state of being before speaking. And model the listening you want to receive. Reverse listening. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the one people trust in the noise. It's about the one where people are going to listen to you and reflect on what you say. It's so incredibly important to not just lean into that frustration, but create trust instead. Now, I do want to just say, before I talk about some reflection and questions you can use to reset yourself this week, let me just say this. If you try everything we're doing here and you genuinely try it and you think, yeah, I've checked those boxes, I'm not feeling frustrated, I'm genuinely leaning into this, I have a lot of self-awareness. If you genuinely are feeling that way and it's not changing, that's a sign that you need to get out, my love. Like, I always like to say this. There is so much that we can do, and then there's things that we cannot do. So I really want you to assess, are you genuinely doing these things and still not being heard? And by genuinely, I think really level up your self-awareness. Are you genuinely listening, or are you listening but with frustration? Because then you are going to be missing things. If you're still not being heard, it may be time to, one, get an executive coach, come and have a chat with me. Sometimes just having one-off conversation with me is enough to unlock this stuff. And I do every month offer a complimentary strategy session. I just offer like 3 or 4 every month where, so there might be, by the time it airs, there might still be one left this month. I don't know. Have a look at my calendar. It's in the show notes. So go and have a look and book a strategy session with me. Sometimes all we need to do is just have that one conversation and you're good to go. And I can give you an honest truth about what might be going on. But if you are genuinely doing this work and it's not moving the needle, it is sometimes time to go, you know what, I'm cutting my losses. It's time to get out, because they aren't listening. They are not that kind of workplace. They're a dictatorial workplace. Now, as much as I'm a believer that as a leader, it is a dictatorship, there are times when you have to listen as a leader, right? You have to, even if you're going to say, and we're going to do this, you have to listen. You have to empathize. You know that. You listen to this podcast. So sometimes it's worth recognizing this is a toxic workplace. It's not about you. There's only so much you can do. Yes, we're all biased against women included, but ultimately you can only go so far in fixing that situation. And if they aren't meeting you part way, it's time to exit stage left. Stop propping up a toxic company. Okay, I always like to just draw a line somewhere when it's time to get out, ladies, because stop propping up toxic companies. Okay, let's finish up here with a few self-reflection prompts. These are some self-coaching. I'm a big fan in not just getting coaches. Of course, I would like you all to have a coach because I think it's the world's best thing. But self-coaching is something I am so passionate about every single one of us doing. Even if you have a coach, I self-coach every day. I have a coach. I have multiple coaches at times. It is about helping you integrate what you've learned and self-reflecting. So these coaching prompts are really to allow you to internalize and reflect and know if you're doing the right thing and know if it's time to move on, actually. So take a minute at some point today. It can be any time today, but I like to do it towards the end of the day so you've got a day to reflect on and ask yourself these questions. Number 1, what am I consistently not being heard at work for? Like, is it with my boss, my peers, my team? Is it a pattern of situations, particular topics that I'm not being taken seriously on? Notice the patterns, the situations where you find yourself repeating, explaining, or feeling dismissed. That awareness alone is powerful because there's something probably going on. Might be a relationship, might be a topic, might be a particular group. You're fine when you meet them one-on-one, but in a group, not so much. What is the pattern? Where are you consistently not being heard? Number 2, what might be getting in the way of your messaging? Is it clarity? Is it timing? Is it tone? Is it emotions? Is it your leadership mindset? Are you showing up grounded and confident, frustrated, hurried, nervous? What's going on? Now, I know that one's really hard because when we're frustrated, all the other emotions start playing up. And in addition, our ability to control ourselves goes out the window. But understand, use this time to self-reflect, understand what might be getting in the way. If you can name it, you can do something about it. Okay, number 3, how am I listening right now? Sometimes the fastest way to be heard is to start listening differently. Think about who in your world needs to be felt and heard by you this week, your team, a colleague, maybe even your boss. Sometimes we get so much respect from our bosses for being the one that's listened to them this week, okay? I always say to executives who are job interviewing, even with a recruiter, and you would think a recruiter, their entire job is to listen to candidates, but you know what? Most people don't feel heard. If you're the person who models attention and empathy, you're going to get invited back. If you're the person who actually goes, hey, how are you doing? And listens rather than jumps in with their own experience, you are golden. So how are you listening right now? Who needs to be heard by you this week? And what can you do to make that happen? Okay, prompt number 4. What's one conversation I can reapproach using outcome, process, ask as a framework? One conversation, that's it. One conversation. Start small, start baby steps. Keep it simple. One message, one moment, one ask. Test it and see if anything changes. These are small incremental shifts in tone, structure, and self-regulation. It's not going to happen overnight. It's executive presence and influence that builds over time. If you've got a reputation right now, it's going to take some time to change that reputation. But this is the foundation of sustainable leadership, clear thinking, calm communication, relationships that are built on trust. At the end of the day, being heard isn't about pushing harder. It's about leading the conversation with focus, with self-awareness, and with intention. So I want you to know, if you're listening today and you realize you need to work on this, and maybe you've been doing it alone for too long, trying to fix communication with sheer grit and hard work, that's why I want you to come and have a chat with me. I want to talk about how to uncover this. And in an upcoming episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about why our guidance can beat our grit when it comes to getting things done. So I'd love for you to come along in a couple of weeks' time, because I want to talk about how grit doesn't get you over. It gets you so far, but sometimes it's about having the right guidance in the room as well. If you've ever wondered whether coaching can actually move the needle for you, I really want you to tune into that next episode. And I also really want you to consider whether or not just having a one-off strategy session would make a difference. As we go into the end of the year, I think so many of us are feeling quite lonely at work. I want you to start the next year. I want you to start 2026 on a high. So let's unlock this. Let's talk about what can you do to unlock the next level you, to get heard better, to have more influence, more leadership, make a difference next year. Okay, until then, take a breath for your next big conversation. Lead with clarity, and remember, your voice really matters. So let's make sure it gets heard. Bye for now.